It's a place name lost to history, a forgotten tongue that has no translation, a place without a name. We only know it as the Village of the Circle because that is what stood out about it. The perfectly circular houses, the perfectly circular huts built of mud and sticks, each with a perfectly circular fire pit in the center. Each one exactly the same except for the difference in color, where families had made them their own. The people who lived here were dressed in similar ways. Huts were similar. Even their faces were similar, dark-skinned with wide, curious eyes. But nothing was normal, not even the children. When we arrived, they stopped playing their games and just stared at us from afar, watching silently. But when we smiled and waved, they ran away. And so we set up camp on the outskirts of the town, but never ventured inside. For 2 weeks, we tried to communicate with the locals. We offered them gifts, learned their language, but they never came close. Then one day we met an old man sitting alone under a tree. He allowed us to come closer. He was the first one to speak to us since we arrived, but his words were few. He only told us one thing: "You must leave." So we asked him why. He didn't answer. He just pointed to the sky. And in the distance we saw it too, a storm forming on the horizon. Suddenly he took off running, stumbling over roots and rocks. We watched him run until he vanished into the forest. Then the clouds opened up and the rain poured down. We huddled around the fire, thinking about leaving. At some point during the night, we woke up from a noise. Someone or something large crashed through the trees. Then everything went silent again. In the morning, the sun revealed the truth. Our camp had been destroyed, as if a giant hand had swept through, crushing everything in its path. But the most frightening thing was what we did not find destroyed: our food. Every last bit of food was gone. Whoever had done this had also eaten everything we had brought with us. Frightened, we packed up and fled. Now we know why the old man had told us to leave. The storm wasn't coming from the sky, it was coming from the earth. This was no ordinary tribe. These people were hiding a terrifying secret. And whatever it was, it did not want us to see it. The film crew explored more of the island and discovered evidence that the tribe's people were terrified of the jungle, which in turn made us even more afraid. For thousands of years, the jungle had been revered as sacred. And although the villages we visited had been advanced in many ways, such as their medical knowledge and spiritual beliefs, these people seemed to have regressed in others. The tribe didn't use tools like axes, machetes, or knives, nor would they allow us to cut down a single leaf or gather any firewood. Yet the jungle itself seemed to fear them. If they were going somewhere, the tall trees bent low to let them pass. Thorny bushes parted ways to let them walk through. Vines pulled themselves apart so they wouldn't get caught. Wild animals, usually dangerous, seemed to recognize them and kept their distance. There were footprints everywhere, but whether the animals were helping the natives or simply avoiding them, we couldn't tell. After a while, we realized that the tribe was living on an ancient path. To learn more, we followed the trail. It led us deep into the forest to a clearing, and what we saw made our blood run cold. It was a massive crater. In the middle lay a sparkling lake, and surrounding the lake were hundreds of crude stone tools: spears, knives, and axes made of stone and bone. The sight of the weapons told us that this tribe had once been fierce warriors, yet they had laid them down and seemingly renounced violence. Why? As we stood there thinking, a local approached us. His face was painted with white stripes and he wore ornaments of feathers and beads. Without saying a word, he turned and walked toward the lake. We followed him in silence until he stopped and pointed to the water. Looking down, we saw a reflection staring back at us. He then looked at us and said, "We are the shadows of the jungle. We are the hunters." Before we could ask him what he meant, he ran into the trees. As the sun began to set, we knew we had to find shelter. The forest grew darker and creepier, and soon we could hear noises that sounded inhuman. Suddenly, we remembered the warnings of the elders. Whoever ventures into the forest at night does not return. So we hurried along, but it was too late. We felt a presence watching us, moving silently through the undergrowth. Something large and dark glided past, disappearing into the shadows. Then we saw a pair of glowing eyes staring at us from the darkness. It was big, bigger than a tiger, a wolf, a bear. Its heavy breathing echoed through the trees as it stalked closer. Then we heard the sound of crashing branches, of the ground crumbling beneath something heavy. Suddenly, a giant shape loomed out of the darkness. It was a hulking beast covered in long, dirty hair. Its face was a grotesque mask of snarling teeth and dripping saliva. We screamed and ran until we collapsed. Only then did the nightmare end. We woke up shivering in a cave, grateful to be alive. We had seen a monster from our nightmares. When we returned home, we told the authorities everything we had seen, but no one believed us. They thought we were crazy. So we decided to go back and finish the job. We armed ourselves with cameras and lights, ready to capture the truth. But when we returned to the village, it was deserted. All the huts were empty. The jungle had reclaimed the village as if it had never been there. Was it all in our heads? Had we dreamed it all? The answer came when we found a small carving of the monster, proof that we were not alone. No. We may have been explorers, but we had found something far more ancient than ourselves. Something that predated mankind and would survive long after we are gone. Some say our world is a dangerous place, filled with starving countries and corrupt politicians, poison and pandemic. But the biggest threat to humans isn't always what we can see, touch, or feel. Sometimes it's the unseen force that watches us from the darkness, waiting for us to stumble into its lair. We're used to thinking of nature as beautiful and awe-inspiring. But there's another side to it, a sinister and evil side that cares nothing for our survival. In fact, it might be happy to see us dead. It doesn't matter how smart we think we are, how technologically advanced we've become, nature will always be a step ahead of us. And if we're not careful, it will make us suffer for daring to trespass in its domain. What are some of the scariest things you've experienced in nature? Tell me in the comments if you enjoyed this story. Please like it and subscribe to my channel. Also, check out these videos.